Join us on the Swim Monkey.
Swim Monkey TV. On the Monkey.
Here we are, Joe. Stories, August 24th, 2020. Sid Cassidy here. Of course, my compatriot, colleague, great running buddy, Joe Auer up in Orlando. How you doing, Joe?
Pretty good. Excited to be on this new time with you, Sid. So I'm so pumped for you.
Well,
it's a good night.
You know, in Florida, a lot of schools started today, Monday the 24th. We did with our St. Andrews school virtually. Our lower school kids start next Monday. The middle and high school are like the 8th and 10th. So, I mean, we're in and we're starting to move. But everything changed. You know, we have all these months of going to the beautiful beach early in the morning, and that changed. But we switched to the afternoon. And guess what, Joe? Big waves rolling, man. We had quite the afternoon in the surf. So thanks for everybody going later. I just figure maybe a lot of coaches are going later too now. We're finally back in. We're using the old Mission Bay Mako warm-up pool. We got our varsity hopefully soon in our pool at St. Andrews. We do have our the guys who are boarding are getting back in that pool. And then we have the Florida Swim School with the young. We got them all over. We got coaches everywhere, just like you, Joe. But you know what? It's the passion of what we love. I mean, and that's what we have on tonight. One of the most passionate and one of the most successful American coaches ever. Have you ever had a chance, Joe, to meet our guest tonight, Bruce Gemmell?
Only at swim meets when I'm like, hey, can I borrow your heat sheet?
There he is. Come on in, Bruce. To do justice, Bruce has been, I don't know, many times, 3 or 4 Golden Google Goggle of the year coach. You know, he's been Olympic coach. He's done so many things. And Joe, his story's incredible. I actually am going to get into where I met Bruce on the Wilmington Aquatic Club. He was one of the star Studley 14 and unders, and I saw one of the guys, his teammate Larry Countryman, just posted, and these guys were all breaking my 14 and under records. I had to keep going on. But Bruce, welcome. Tell us what's going on. You're in the nation's capital, I assume.
I am in the nation's capital. I am glad to be here. Sid, thanks for the intro. But I got to tell you, I watched the intro to the show and you ran through all the pictures and I didn't see myself in there anytime. So what do I have to do to get a picture of the intro?
As a recurring guest, you will earn a beautiful headshot, possibly even one of your body shots if you prefer. You know, I will get you in there, Gemmell. You're a big part of the Wilmington Aquatic Club, and probably of all the guys who swam there, the only one that I know of that ever became an Olympic coach. Did we have any other WAC guys? I know they had a WAC Olympians, but did we have anybody WAC make the Olympic team as a coach? I think you're the one and only, right?
I don't think so. I don't think we had any coaches. You know, they say if you can't swim, coach. So that's what I did.
So that makes it special.
I just want you to tell Joe, how do you remember? You know, and Kara has this great show on Sundays about swim lessons, and she was asking Dara Torres, do you remember where you learned to swim, Bruce? And if not, yes, no, but when you got into competitive swimming and how you made the jump to AAU swimming back in the day?
Well, you know, I was what I thought a pretty good summer league wonder at the time when I was a little kid, and I signed up for some mechanics lessons with the famous Bob Matson. And I went to the first session I went to, and I was 7 or 8 years old, and I got yelled at like everybody did. And I was so scared and so intimidated that I wasn't even going to go back. I swore I wasn't going to go back the next week. And actually, I think my parents said it was okay. I didn't have to go back. But next week rolled around, and the 2 other people I was going with, one of them was sick and didn't feel like it was right to make the other one go by themselves. So I said, fine, I'd go for a second time. And 10 years later, I was still there swimming. Still a little afraid of Coach Matson, but, you know, I'd overcome some of the hurdles by then.
So you were a summer club swimmer. Were you at Timber Lane?
I was at Timber Lane, 20 yards long and a trapezoid.
A trapezoid pool. Joe, this is the Northern, what was it? The NBSL, right?
Yep, NBSL.
North Brandywine?
Yes.
Swimland? And they had 3 divisions, Joe, 6 teams in each division. If you won your division, you moved up. You lost, you moved down. But it was such a glorious summer through the 60s and 70s in suburban Delaware. And they had another league south of town, the Red Clay Creek. And they had it all the way down through Virginia, where you are now, up into New England. The Northeast summer clubs. And what's really interesting is it really did a lot for the sport of swimming in terms of people that were living in those suburbs that were being built up, you know, in the 50s and 60s, right?
Everybody did it, and I remember at the championships, the state politicians, and I don't want to make a political discussion here, but the state politicians would show up to shake hands and kiss babies at the Summer League Championship meet, and that's what it was, what everybody in North Wilmington did.
And that's where you met Joe Biden. Of course, he had kids swimming and made lessons, and my mom taught his kids. Oh yeah, but you're right, Joe. Joe Biden. We're not gonna make this political, even though we have this Delaware connection. Because we definitely don't want Barb getting into it.
He's coming on in 20 minutes, so we better make it about political. No,
so anyway, so now you make the mechanics, and eventually, I know where you lived, Mount Pleasant High School, which I heard, congratulations, are putting you into the Mount Pleasant Hall of Fame, deservedly so. So it was about a 20 to 30 minute drive, depending on traffic, and if you had carpool, it could be 40, 45, 50 minutes from North Wilmington down to the Wilmington Aquatic Club, which was at Wilmington Swim School. If you ever drove over the Delaware Memorial Bridge, Joe, you look to the south just before you pay your toll, and that used to be the Howard Johnsons, then it was the Harley Davidson, but it shared a lot with the Wilmington Swim School and eventually Wilmington Swim School and Health Center. So, Bruce, you guys are making the journey down. You're swimming with guys like Alfie Holiday, and your guys are becoming pretty good. Eric Erickson, you and Eric, both Mount Pleasant guys. So you get to high school, and then you're one of the first of that group to look off. And Michigan's. How did you make the transition from that Sea Tiger into where you're going for the University of Michigan?
Oh, I got to tell you, there was a transition before that, because I was an age grouper like every other age grouper, and I was a mediocre age grouper like every other age grouper. And then summer of '75, Bob Matson decided to create the Kamikaze Group. And the Kamikaze was going to be just these crazy swimmers that did nothing but swim all summer. And I was the youngster in the group. I don't know if I was the youngest one, but I think I might have been the youngest one.
You definitely were.
And I looked up to Sid Cassidy and all the other Mary D. Mackey and Rick Green and Gene Fagan and that whole crew. And I wanted to be like them. And we would go swim in the Avondale Quarry in the morning. And I remember that practice would start at 8 o'clock in the morning. And we'd swim the long way in the quarry, which was about 200 meters long. And we'd swim that way for 2 hours. And then we'd hop out. We'd get a little snack. We'd set the thing up width-wise, which was about 50 meters. And then we'd swim for at least another 2 hours. Practice was supposed to be over at 12 o'clock. But there were no clocks, and nobody had any Swatch watches then or anything else. So we didn't really know what time it was. Practice would wrap up. We'd hop in the car, we'd drive down the dirt road, and there was a big clock at the ice cream place on our way out, and it would always say 1 o'clock or 1:15 or 1:30 or something like that. We'd done a 5-hour morning practice. We'd go home. I don't know if you ate breakfast or lunch or dinner or whatever it was, and then you'd come back and swim in the afternoon for another hour and a half or 2 hours, and then on Tuesday, Thursday nights, you'd go swim your summer league meet.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And we loved it. And I tell my kids now, I tell the kids I coach now, that's the best summers I ever spent. Best summer, 5 hours in the morning, quick snack, afternoon practice, and maybe a swim meet at night. Best summers I ever had. They were the best times.
1975. You were 14 or 15? 14?
I was 14 years old, a young 14 years old, but I was 14 years old, trying to catch up to Sid Cassidy, trying to make my way up the
Joe, I had just done my freshman year at NC State, and I came home. Unlike a lot of swimmers, I came back to swim for Bob, and the quarry was magical. We're going to do a story. I'm going to have a whole quarry and quarry month some night, but that moniker Kamikazes came because the Nationals were in Kansas City. And I remember thinking, well, we want to be the Kangaroos. And I wanted some alliteration. I said, hey, Bob, how about the Kansas City Kamikazes? And he loved it. It'd be politically incorrect today. There's no way you could get away with it. But Bob was like, yeah, because we'll do anything. We'll dive right in, our plane right into it. We're going to make it. And everybody in that group was committed. You couldn't miss a practice. You did doubles on Saturday, like Bruce is talking about, where we would go 4 hours plus long course in the morning. But that kind of thinking, Bruce, had to affect you in terms of your commitment and the type of character that you are today. Certainly started being formed because you really soared to excellence. There were a lot of guys on that team, but only one in your class got to a D1 school like Michigan. So now from 14 to 18, you bulk up, you build up. How did you get to Urbanchek? What happened there?
Oh, wow. That's a longer story than we might have time for here.
We got all night.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I got to go back because we're going to start talking about coaching soon. I want to go back to my swimming claim to fame. Okay. So I went to my second junior nationals. It wasn't my first junior nationals, but I went to my second junior nationals, probably as a junior in high school. And junior nationals they're kind of a big deal then. They're kind of a big deal now, but I actually swam fast enough to win the 200 backstroke. So I thought I was pretty good. I had won the 200 backstroke. And next day in Huntsville, Alabama, the next day the newspapers got a picture of me on the front of the sports page winning the 200 backstroke. And right next to me is this girl who had won the 200 fly who I'd never heard about before, and it was Mary T. Maher. And so for one day in time, I was on the same level as Mary T. Okay? After that, it was not quite so much, but she went up and I kind of stayed. But for one day, Mary T. Maher and I were the same level. We were the best of the best that day.
That's well, awesome. You know what? Huntsville is still one of America's greatest swimming cities, Bruce. And that pool that you swam in, we warmed up in, and they do a great job maintaining because they built another pool next to it. And I highly recommend you consider getting your great NCAP team down there at some point for a big meet because hospitality is unbelievable and the people running it down there are fantastic. I see that Roddy Bergstrom and Lindsay Swiderski and some of you, Ted Jackson, look at all your Delaware friends that, still there's Jeremy Lin, speaking of the Northeast and, so Bruce, so now you're off at Michigan, you get into your swimming, okay? And tell us a little bit about that. University of Michigan, certainly you interacted with one of the greatest coaches ever.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. Did not have John my first few years, but John Urbanchek came in to coach my senior year. And I just remember swimming my senior year with him and thinking if I had him all 4 years, one of two things would have happened. Either I would have quit swimming because he was that hard, or I would have been really, really good. And we'll never know which one it would have been. But swimming for 1 year with John was he's tough. He's fair. He's honest. He's fun, but he was tough. And then I stayed while I was going to grad school and coached with him for a year. I was the assistant coach. I really didn't do much. That assistant coach didn't do much back then. And I told John I thought maybe I wanted to go into coaching because I sort of liked it. And he started yelling and screaming at me. He said, I'm going to coaching. No, you're being an engineer. Coaching, the hours are long. The kids are a pain in the neck. You'll never get along with the parents, on and on and on. you go be an engineer, go make a ton of money, and give it all back to Michigan swimming.
That's a good idea. It's a good idea.
Yeah, well, I took his advice, maybe right or wrong, and I actually went and became an engineer for 20 years or so, and just sort of found my way back into coaching over that period of time too. But he's a good man, and he's still involved in the sport, and he's one of my great mentors and great friends. As 30 years later.
My connection with you opened up a whole new door when I was open water national team head coach, and we were in Perth, Australia, and John was either the head coach of the men or one of the head coaches, and he didn't really know me, kind of knew, and then I brought up your name, and boom, we were fast friends. And he was like, oh, Bruce, and then from that point on, I've learned so much, as many American coaches have, from that guy. And coaching, like for you, Bruce, you were always kind of like, we talk about the distance. When you were at Michigan, Joe, this is a crazy story. He comes home after your sophomore year.
Sophomore year.
So I'm now instead of the team captain when he's the 14 and under, I'm now the head coach. Matson said, you're in charge. And so Bruce comes in and he tells me, I really got to do something. I need to do something a little bit different. I need to do, see what are you talking about? As I remember, Bruce, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that what happened was he came back the next day, said, I want to go 50,000 yards in one day. And I said, okay, well, how do you get, I said, you write it up. And he comes in with these two identical 25K practices. One is a series of 1,000 freestyles and then 1,000 broken backstroke, starting with 40 25s all the way up to 1,000 straight backstroke and down to 40 25s by 25s, 50s, 100s, 200s, and it was like, okay, boom, here's 25K. And then the mirror opposite. And Bruce, I think you were still high school, or you were college, but I think we were talking like maybe 110 base for the back, or maybe 105 for free. I don't know. But he went unbelievable, and then he ended up going about 30K in the morning. Then he came back, and boy, he looked real bad after. I was like, oh God, we got to go another 20. He gets to that point, and then he tells me he wants to go even more. I think what I remember is a kid that was so driven, and he was like that. I need to do something. And back then, Bruce, the thinking on the whole national team, I mean, you do this, I'll do this plus, I'll do this plus. And it was like Schubert was going to do whatever more out in Mission Viejo. And, Bill Rose was going to, so he ends up doing this. What's your memory of that day? And do you think, I know it didn't help you that summer swimming. We weren't even going to go to nationals. You were like, I just got to do, but I definitely think it gave you some kind of mental breakthrough. What's your recollection?
My recollection is not the 6 hours in the morning. It was something like that, and it was 30K. But as I mentioned 10 minutes ago, 5 hours in the morning was what we had done before. So maybe that wasn't a big deal. And then I went home and I came back in the afternoon and I had another 20K planned or something like that. And there was a lot of freestyle and backstroke. There wasn't a lot of breaststroke or butterfly going on. I remember
zero.
But I remember getting up to 50K, and that's when I remember come on, you can go another 500. You can get another 500. I go another 500, and you can do one more. You can do one more. You can do one more. And this went on to about 54K, I think. And I think I finally just tapped out. If this was an MMA thing, I was just gonna tap out at 54. And I remember almost being delirious, sort of. I drove home, which is probably not the right thing to do. It's probably worse than a drunk driver on the road. But I remember driving home, and all I remember thinking is, I got to go to practice tomorrow. I got to go to practice tomorrow. And I came back the next day, and I wasn't worth anything, but I made sure that I was there. And I think
you see, Joe, a lot of people always think of Bruce Gemmell, great coach. Oh, he coached Katie Ledecky. He got all the, he was up this world records, all this and that. But the reality is his best coaching job was probably done with this guy right here.
What?
Yeah, Andrew Gemmell. I mean, he had to raise his son, Okay. I mean, he had to raise his son, Andrew. Andrew, I think you are the best coaching job, because not only did you become national Olympic team, won the Olympic trials, all that stuff, but the great young man that you are. Tell us a story. Tell us a little bit about your dad.
Well, first of all, he always said for coaching, you know, if you're swimming slow, you have two people to blame. You can either blame your parents or your coach, your genes or your coaching. And I had sort of one-stop shopping for that, which made it really easy for me. But you know, you're telling that 50,000 or 54,000, whatever I got up to story, and the worst part about that was that no matter how far we swam, I could never complain about going for it. Well, I went 54,000 back in the day. I was like, oh my gosh, like you're killing me. I remember we did 31,000s at one point when I was probably 15 or 16. And it's like, oh, that's barely half. You're only just let me do my 31,000s. And that was, you know, not enough. I think actually the worst part about the 31,000s, I remember this pretty clearly, is I did 31,000s. He got us all psyched to do that. And we came in for 5 or 6 hours on one morning.
Oh my God.
And the next morning we went like 14 or 15. And I was just like, God, did we have to go 14 the next morning too? Like, couldn't we have gone like 8 or something? It was the 15 the next morning that really put me over the edge.
So we asked your dad, you know, about his start. And so, I mean, certainly your start was also at Timber Lane, I believe.
Timber Lane at the tub, and then also back at WAC. I was doing lessons with Peggy and mechanics with Bob. I had about the same thing, just 30 years later.
And you graduated what year out of high school?
2009.
And went right to Jack Bowerly at University of Georgia.
Jack and Harvey, the transition from my dad to Harvey was pretty seamless. There wasn't a whole lot different going on there. Yeah,
I guess that's good. Well, it was good enough for you to win the Olympic trials and certainly represent us. I remember, Bruce, I was telling Andrew, you know, coming on, Joe and I have been in contact with Bonnie Ford. Sadly, in October, we're going to mark 10 years since we've lost the great Fran Crippen. God rest his soul. And we're going to have a special show on when we get into October. But I remember the good times, and I remember that medal that they tried to take away from Fran, which I think could have been gold, but it might have been, it was going to be gold or silver, and Andrew was going to be fighting it out for the bronze until, bam, you know, Crippen runs head on straight into the buoy. It goes around the wrong side and then goes under, but it was a guide buoy, so it was a different color. We had a whole big thing. You remember, Bruce, we had to go to the FINA Bureau, and I'm the chairman. I'm getting ready to retire. It's like it's my swan song in 2009 at Rome World Championship. Andrew, what do you remember about that race, you and Fran?
Well, I remember about that race is that whole World Championships had been an adventure up to that point. You know, they had Ostia was out in Ostia, so like 30 minutes outside of Rome, and they had built this beautiful finish platform and this beautiful dock, and they were all ready to host this great race. And then a once every 30 years storm blew through 2 days before the race and blew it all. I mean, it was gone. We went there, you know, the next morning after the storm, and it was all just rubble, essentially. And so they moved the races, and now the 5K and the 10K were back to back. And I think, honestly, that was you know, they didn't have a day off in between. And I was 18 and I was swimming 30,000 yards a day. And the 5 and 10K back to back, man, sign me up. Fran was the one. I remember Fran, we both did pretty well in the 5K as well. We were both, you know, top 5, top 8. And I remember Fran being on the massage table after the 5K. And some local press came over, and our guy who was doing PT waited till Fran was doing interviewing to really like dig into his lats. And Fran was, you know, 5 or 6 years older than me, and he was just so sore. But if you got him in front of the camera while he was doing the, you know, getting the kinks worked out, he couldn't curse at the trainer. But so that race was there. That meet had already been crazy. You know, the race is getting moved around days, and then, you know, the order getting switched up, and then, you know, the 10K comes, and you know, it's always a battle. And my first international race, and I remember just being right behind Thomas Lurs with, you know, the great German open water swimmer who's probably the best ever, and 500 meters to go. All right, perfect position. I'm gonna go here soon. 400 meters to go. All right, I'm gonna go soon. Got to about like 350 and tried to go. no way. All right, I'm going to sit right on his feet and go as far as that takes me. And it took me to a silver medal. So it was not a bad place to be. I remember with Fran and Valerio Clary, the Italian guy, which was also part of the reason why the challenge was so contentious, was we were in Italy and the Italian guy was the one who would have gotten bronze if not for Fran. But it was a crazy trip and a crazy first experience to open water. And that probably was a good introduction to what it's usually like. It's always going to be something crazy. You're on mute, Sid.
I've told more. Yeah, I've told more than one person about that story. And it's just remarkable the way it all went down. And you're right, Lurs, arguably, you know, during that stretch, certainly the greatest of that time and possibly all time, the way he trained and swam and left his mark. Bruce, you remember watching that race? Could you see all that at the finish?
I remember the trips sort of like Andrew does. I had traveled over by myself. I was not part of the staff or anything. And I went to go see the venue the first day. And as Andrew said, it had all blown away and the storm had come through. So the schedule all got shifted around. And Andrew swam a pretty good 5K. And I was actually supposed to go home the next day. And I thought, I swam a good 5K. Maybe I'll just leave and miss the 10K. But I ended up changing my flight and staying for the 10K. And it was a big course. So they swam out into the sea and way out of sight. And all you could do was watch the big monitor for a little while. And then they'd come back and it was only 3 laps for a 10K. And so, you know, as Andrew swam his races, the first time he came through, he was probably in 45th place. And the second time he came through, he was probably in 25th place. And, you know, you couldn't see him. And I didn't really even know he was in medal contention until there were maybe 300 meters to go. And I picked him up on the monitor because, of course, they were just following Lurs most of the time. So I got pretty excited for those last 300 meters. But the rest of the time, there wasn't really much going on as far as I was concerned.
Well, I do remember it very, very well, and you know, it really took more than a day, and the appeals went one way. Our head referee, he changed his mind after. You know, it was just crazy. But what happened was, in the FINA Bureau, they got it right, and they usually do. You know, because the reality was, in the meeting, we said that those colored buoys didn't matter which side you went on. And now it's kind of like the Crippen rule, that they had those buoys the same color as the directional buoys, and it had it in print right on the, you know, hey, look, they don't matter. Yellow buoys don't matter. Go either side. You know, they were saying, but this one's connected by a lane line. It's a finish chute. So what? It's a yellow buoy. And so, yeah, I was very proud. I was like, okay, that's a good way for me to retire. I stepped away, and then a couple years later, they yanked me back. But I remember watching your son, and the other race that I thought, you know, that you probably don't like to remember, but unjust, was that Fort Lauderdale trials when everything comes down to one race. And what was that? The 2008 to go to Beijing. I think it was Andrew.
No, so it was the 11 one. It was 11. It was 11 to go to London.
Okay, so it was to go to London, and you were like, you were sick and you were fighting. And it's like. And that's why in open water stories and in Europeans, a lot of people don't go on just one race. They kind of go on a series of rankings, and it created a lot of discussion and worthwhile discussion, because when you have just one race, there's a lot of reasons why that's fair, and there's reasons why maybe it's not. And the longer the race is, where it comes down to just a minute, what happened in Fort Lauderdale, the water was so rough, we couldn't use the finish chute that we had designed. We had a whole nother thing. Then you had to turn, and it was like 25 yards after the last turn. It was a nightmare. And 3 guys come in, touch. And unfortunately for you, Andrew, you were the third.
Yeah, that was I remember with Fort Lauderdale, day before the race, the water may as well have been glass. Yeah. Day after the race, water may as well have been glass. Day of the race, they're 5-foot swells. I mean, that is the choppiest water I probably ever swam in. And it's the nature of the beast. It's just open water. There's going to be things that are crazy. It really does teach you a lot of good life skills of just like, hey, just go with it. You'll figure it out as you go. You'll be all right.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you and your dad, because I brought you in certainly being Bruce. I coach Quinn, you know, and I mean, and I love coaching with him. I mean, he calls me on stuff, but he's an unbelievable young coach, and I really respect what he's doing as a young coach. But that first time he broke out of the assistant coaches into my group, I remember, I think it helped me because when I coached my sister Marion, I definitely ignored her the first year. I was a young coach, and I was like, oh, I don't want to play favorites. Tell me a little bit about that father-son when Andrew first came in, and then, I mean, it must have been 10, 12 years through the Olympics and even now as a young man who's still involved in USA Swimming, helping us through in many levels. Talk about the father-son relationship, Bruce.
I give him all the credit in the world, because if I thought it was hard, I think it's probably harder on the athlete certainly than it is on the coach. And it took us a little bit, but we were pretty good about what happens at the pool stays at the pool, and when we go home, we talk about other stuff in the household. And we were pretty good about that. He was very good about that, and I think that worked real well. It took us a little while to develop our rhythm at swim meets. He is very invested in his swims, and I, as the coach and the parent, was probably sort of doubly invested. And we probably had some early on, when we were just moving into the national level, some early on national swims where you're sort of feeling a little extra investment, where he'd come over after the swim and I'd have something I wanted to say and he'd have something he wanted to say. And we would be right there on the pool deck, and, you know, we weren't going to come to blows or anything, but it was a little tense. And we put in place the 15-minute rule that he wasn't allowed to come over and talk to me until at least 15 minutes after his swim and go warm down. And, you know, 15 or 20 minutes later, I'd seen a few more heats. I was probably mad at somebody else by then, or had something else to say to somebody else. So once we put that 20-minute roll in, we got along a lot better, I think, at meets with that little buffer there. And I still use that today. I tell anybody I'm coaching now, so I don't want to see you for 20 minutes after your swim.
Well, I like that. You know, I've never thought. I always told my kids, come down, especially because I don't want to forget. You know, I'm at this stage of my career. But Andrew, what about you? Father, son, son, father.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 15-minute rule, I would think my dad's timing is right. About 16, 17, and you know, starting to move up and some bigger meets and starting to feel the pressure a little bit more. And, you know, I think we pretended that the 15, 20-minute rule was like, oh, this is good warm down. You know, this is good warm down etiquette. You've got to, you know, I was swimming every event under the sun. I'm swimming four events a session or whatever. You know, take care of your swims. And I think we pretended that was the real reason. But I think the reason was, we both needed just some time to cool off, and it worked well for us. And as you said, I mean, he started coaching me at some capacity when I was 10, and I think it helped starting younger. I think if we had started coaching me at 15, it might have been a different story. But, I mean, he coached me from 10 to 26, and we definitely worked out our routine and worked out we knew each other well. We for better or for worse, we knew each other really well, and we made it work pretty well as well.
But Sid, I got to tell this story though. So we were at nationals in I don't know what year it was, but it was out of Stanford. And luck of the draw, or the order of events, the 400 free and the 400 IM were both on the same day. We're two of Andrew's better events. I don't know who did the event order, but they were both on the same day.
Let me jump in real quick. This is 6 days after getting back from China from World Championships, from the 2011 World. So I'm back from China. I'm jet lagged, you know, as bad as anything. And then we start nationals, and I'll let you pick up the story there. Yeah.
So he's sort of playing around with the idea of, hey, you know, I don't know that I want to swim 400s, you know, all in one day here. As he said, he just gotten back from China, and the 400 free was first. And you know, said, okay, well, you know, if you make the A final in the 400 free, you know, because that wasn't really his best event. That would have been a good swim to make the A final in 400 free. And when we do that, we'll just swim the IM once, and we'll scratch that at night. So he swam the 400 free, must have had a pretty good swim, made the A final. I said, great, you can swim the 400 free tonight. You know, we're all set, everything's fine. And I don't even do an intent to scratch or anything. And whatever it was, 90 minutes later, 2 hours later, he swims the 400 IM. He has a pretty good swim. and he ends up being top seed. And I say, Christ, you're top seed. You can't scratch now in the 400 IM. And he's cussing and muttering under his breath, so he didn't scratch either one of them. Swam both of them again at night. So he swam 400s the same day, was toast the next day for a 200 fly, but 3 or 4 days later, he came back and won his first 1500 national championship. So it all worked out in the end, but I don't think he was too happy with me on that one.
I remember getting out of the pool, 200 fly the next morning. I remember getting out of the pool and you just laughing at it. It was some abysmal 2 fly and you just laughing at me. I think we might have broke the 20-minute rule and you just said, just go warm down. It's fine. It's about what we expected.
Well, I would tell both of you this, that going back to, your father, your genes, like the whole idea that you have 2 people you can blame, you also have 2 people you can thank, your parents and your coaches, because you got great genes. It's very obvious, because we are going to talk about your sister Erin. We'll get to that. But because when I grew up swimming, and in that pool where you grew up swimming, Bruce, where you grew up swimming, Andrew, the pool that Bob built, 2150 Newcastle Avenue, Wilmington Swim School and Health Center. That was Wilmington Aquatic Club. It was an amazing place indeed. The glue I know when I was swimming, and I would argue when you were swimming, Andrew, and your dad was coaching. I mean, he would work all day and then come in and coach you guys. I know he was 2 full-time jobs while he was, raising you too. And the thing that kept our practice together were Kathy McNichol, Mary DeMackey, Jenny Franks. We had really unbelievable women training with us. And I want to say you guys made it because you had some women keeping you on your toes, like these 2 women right here. All right? Welcome in KJ, Caitlin Jones, and Nicole Vernon Lyon. Hello, ladies. Tell us where you are. Let's start with you, Vern. What's going on? And say hello to your coach there.
Hey, Bruce.
Vern!
How are you?
Good.
Oh, my goodness. Currently, I'm actually in Delaware, back home for a family event. But I have been living in Atlanta, right outside of Smyrna. I am actually a sports counselor now. I work with a bunch of different athletes through all sorts of different performance anxiety and different things that are going on. But yeah.
Business. I'm sure you have plenty of business this year.
Oh my gosh, yes.
All right, KJ, where are you? What's going on?
Hi, I'm out here in Southern California, living in Orange County, not too far from the pool that Nationals always used to be at. I'm working as a medical device engineer for stroke products. So not the worst place to be quarantined. Pretty close to the beach.
Now, Bruce, I know you could go on the accolades of these 2 women, but to put things in perspective, you were coaching in Delaware, and you can correct me, before you were full time, and you really started getting these kids not just at junior nationals, but at the national level. I mean, all 3 of these athletes were big D1, All-American, top of the podium type athletes at UVA, the great University of Virginia for Caitlin, and Nicole, a teammate of Andrew's. I know because I went up when my son, she was recruiting him to be a Bulldog, and she was a Bowerly. So, Andrew, I want you to tell me, these 2 ladies in particular, training story, something you learned training with them. Can you help us out?
Man, I think we all caused my dad to lose about 3 years of his life for different reasons. Probably different ones. I
remember my dad coming down for long course in Boca. Bruce, you remember that?
I mean, my dad talked about the quarry trips and how much fun he had. And we had a really fun group. We had just a group of about, 8 of us, 8 or 10 of us. And we swam a lot. And I think the only thing that got us through swimming a lot was people we swam a lot with. And it said it was a lot of fun. Although I was telling the story earlier today of, speaking of long swimming, we did a 16,000 reverse IM at one point. And I don't think KJ did. I think she was still too young. But I remember Vern did it with another girl we were swimming with, Katie Murphy. And I swear they skipped 100. They might have skipped it's a 4 hour straight swim, and they skipped like 150. I remember blowing up at the end at Vern and being like, "You can't skip." Why?
Do you remember that?
That's the memory that's coming to mind right now, for better or for worse, of what swimming with us was like.
And Bruce, you're laughing. What did Bruce? You're like, yeah, they probably. Do you now? Here's my question, Vern. Did you intentionally cut to finish closer?
I literally lost count. I went off of how many times Andrew lapped me. Is usually how I counted in practice. Like, Gemmel lapped me this amount many times. And Bruce finished us with butterfly. Like, if you know my swimming accolades, like, but we couldn't fix my butterfly to save our lives. And yeah, I don't think we intentionally did, but Gemmel went off. Like, not Bruce. Andrew went off at us.
Yeah, my dad couldn't have cared less. Yeah, you swam 4 hours straight. It's close enough.
So let's start with you first, Nicole. How did you come to swim for Bruce, and what was your impression of him when you first started?
I don't know if he wants me to say this. We, Bruce and I had this mutual agreement that when we first met, neither of us liked each other. And long story short, Delaware swim team merged with Team Delaware, and I didn't have a choice. Sean looked at me one day and said, "You're starting with Bruce next week," and I cursed and swore and walked on pool deck the first time and looked at Bruce and said, "I don't like you. I hope you know that." And that's about where it started. And then a few years later, he's like, the feeling was mutual. Can hear my mother laugh.
KJ, was your meeting with Bruce as acrimonious, or how did you meet him?
It was a little bit different. I think I was 9 years old when I joined his group. Everyone else was a little bit older. I don't really remember it, to be honest. Pretty long ago.
Okay, but how about a memory of swimming for Bruce and something that he did that inspired you, or at least made you laugh?
Where to start? I will never forget the practice where we did something wrong. I don't remember what it was. We were probably swimming too slow, and he decides to leave the pool deck, and we all pretended to leave. So we walked out the door, and 5 minutes later, we look up in the stands, and he's like peeking through the door to see if we're still there doing the practice and trying to be all sneaky, but we all knew. So I'll never forget that.
Vern, you got one that you can share?
I mean, one. It made it my childhood. I mean, I don't know what, I mean, the list could go on and on. There was one time we were at Junior Pan Packs, and the night before, Bruce said to me, we're like, I don't know, 15, 16, 17. And we'd been joking around, all of us at dinner, and Bruce looks at me and he goes, "If you don't get it together, you're going to embarrass yourself tomorrow." And then I proceeded to embarrass myself when I ripped 4 suits before the A final. And Bruce walks up to me and said, "If you go out fast on your adrenaline, you will die." And he said something along those lines to me, and all I remember is being saying, like, Bruce is going to kill me if I go out fast because everyone knows I'm going to die. Between those, or when KJ and I would race in practice, he'd be like, "You hear that thumping noise?" Like, it just depended who was winning which day on who was getting the comments. Or his classic, like, after a race, he'd be like, "What was that?" Those were some of the classic ones. Or like, "Would you even call that a swim?" was some of his more catchy lines I got after my 2 flies.
All right,
Vern,
so we have to
so
flip
nice,
the table,
so
Bruce. You've
soft
been
now.
quiet long enough.
Unreal.
When these 2 young ladies, you had no idea they were coming in tonight. You probably haven't seen them in a while. Certainly, and everybody thinks of Bruce Gemmel, the great Katie Ledecky coach. I say it was at Wilmington, Delaware, and certainly you ladies swimming in that pool, that I grew up in, that Bob built, that you all really turned Bruce into a household name in the aquatic world. And that's why you had the nation's capital swim team when they needed somebody. After Katie had shocked the world and won the 800 in London, they're like, oh my gosh, and her coach had left and gone over to Cal Berkeley. Then it's like, who do we go? They came after your dad, Andrew. They came after you, Bruce. I think because of all the great success you had with these athletes. Tell me a story about these ladies that we'd all love to hear.
Well, I've got to defend myself a little bit, I think, at some point here. But before I do that, I will say that, and I mean this sincerely and very genuinely, one of my, if not my proudest moment coaching was at Junior Nationals one year when the 2 of them went 1-2 in the 400 IM. Because it's kind of like anybody can coach one person and go fast, but I got, both of them went 1, 2 in the 4 a.m. And honestly, I don't remember the times. I don't remember the order, but I do remember giving out the awards, and that was a lot of fun. So that was a good thing. KJ started with me when she was 8, I believe. And she used to occasionally, she came from a little bit distance, and she used to occasionally be a little bit late to practice. And I remember her running in with her cap on, her goggles on, obviously her suit on underneath, and that's how she'd show up to practice, even if she was like 90 seconds late. So I remember 8-year-old KJ doing that. So that's a fond memory. And as far as going and sitting in the stands when I either get frustrated or annoyed or whatever else, full disclosure, I have done that within the past year where I am now. So I guess old habits die hard, and I imagine the swimmers could tell you exactly why I did it. I couldn't, but I was just sort of enough's enough, and I walked out the back door and around to the bleachers upstairs, and I just sat down in the bleachers and watched the rest of practice from up there. And then usually I start getting a little antsy, and I go to the railing of the bleachers, and then eventually I'm like, oh, Christ, I got to go down there and tell them to fix that. So I find my way back on the pool deck that way. But apparently they remember that I was doing it with them back in the old Wilmington Aquatic Club building. Great times. Great times.
So no doubt that the women training, and I think this is universal, they've really been the backbone, I think, of distance swimming. And, you even look in marathon, you have people like Shelly Taylor-Smith. She won the Atlantic City overall, beat all the guys. And certainly in the practices I've had through the years, a lot of strong women can keep up, Andrew, with all the guys. And now you have a new blood, Bruce, your daughter, Erin, who has come along here in the last several years. And some insiders even say that, Tokyo 2021 is the advantage of the younger up-and-coming swimmer like an Erin Gemmel, who's one of the nation's best 200-meter freestylers, bar any age. How do you train your daughter different than you trained your son? And do you train your daughter anywhere near the way you train these two lovely ladies with us tonight?
The answer to that would be no. I don't know if these two ladies had the fortune or misfortune of Andrew being adapting very well to volume. And it seemed like the more we did, the better he got. The more we did, the better he got. The more we did, the better he got. So why stop doing it? And so that was a little bit in vogue back then. And that's not quite the case where we are right now with the group of individuals that I'm currently coaching. And I don't want to turn this into a coaching clinic. I know this is not a coaching clinic.
No,
we're here for stories. But I'm coaching this group now that is generally a mixed gender group like most club teams are. And we run into this COVID situation where I've got to cut the size of the group down and have some separation and limit on lane size, kids per lane. And so I separated the group, the boys group and the girls group. And the girls have done nothing but flourish all summer. Although today was one of those days where I might have walked out and watched from outside if I had, had the opportunity to do that. But anyway, they've really flourished this summer. And it's interesting to hear Sid saying that the backbone of so many strong teams, especially club teams, are just women, girls like these two here that, are just willing to come in every day and stick it out there and don't take any crap from the guys. And I tell you, these two did not take any crap from the guys. And there's some stories for another time that I could probably tell related to that. But you're not going to get Cliff Gordon to come on here, are you? He's not popping on next, is he?
Oh, no. Okay. But he'll probably be upset with me for not contacting him.
All right. Well, but between these two ladies and my son and Cliff, there was there was some honest exchanges of emotions or thoughts during the practices from now and then. And I thank these ladies for keeping the gentlemen in line. And I see those dynamics with what I have going on now too with with the group I'm coaching that includes my daughter.
Well, Bruce, was it because of swimmers like this? And I don't recall exactly when you gave up your full-time job and career of 20 years, you know, to really focus on a much less paying job. But, you know, obviously we don't do it for the money until maybe a guy like Tom Ugas comes calling along and say, hey, okay, I'll come down, but, you know, it means a lot. I've got to relocate my whole family. But when was it that you changed from, okay, I'm going to give my engineering career and this job a backseat and go full bore? Was it because of these swimmers or swimmers like them?
I was over the years, I had wound down on the engineering. I had tried to quit one time and they said, hey, would you be willing to work part-time? And I said, sure, I can do that. And then I went to quit another time and they said, well, would you be willing to work part-time and for most of it from home? And I was like, yeah, I can do that too, especially with the pay and the benefits and everything. But I very remember specifically when it was actually Vern's junior Pan Pac trip, Jack Roach asked me to be on staff. And I said, you know, I had a big engineering conference that same time. And I thought, well, I can go to the engineering conference or I can go be on the Pan Pac staff in Hawaii. I can go on the engineering conference. So I went to the engineering group and I said, hey, look, I'm going to take vacation. I'm not going to be able to go to this conference. And they were like, oh, you can't do that. It's important that you be there. We need you. No, I'm going to take vacation and I'm going to go to Hawaii. And shortly thereafter, I was sitting on the couch one night and my lovely wife said to me, why don't you just quit that engineering thing and go coach full time? And I think that decision was made in about 6 seconds once it had her blessing.
Well, full disclosure, your wife, the former Barb Harris, and the mother of your lovely daughter, Erin, and the claimant of the sprint genes that bring Erin to the forefront of American women's swimming these days, swam for me and was one of my very best swimmers in the Olympic trials, you know, backstroke. She went to Northwestern All-American. So, you know, realistically, you know, you've got quite the household of swimmers. I don't know how many people, you know, can claim that.
Hold on here. So believe it or not, although she likes to claim she's a sprinter, my daughter went and did the whatever it was called, cross the Chesapeake's, whatever open water swim this past weekend. She did that and she hopped in. And she's a sprinter, so she sprinted right to the front, and she ended up winning it relatively easily, her open water swim. And watching her do that, somebody asked me, oh, she done a lot of these? And I said, no, not really. And they said, well, she done them before. And I said, well, maybe one or two. And the very first one she did was the September Splash in Wildwood Crest, New Jersey. And I think it was 400 meters out to a buoy and back. She was 6 or 7 years old. And at least one of these two, if not both of these two young ladies, escorted her for that swim. And they were swimming beside her. It was about as slow as they could go while she did her first 400 meters. So thank you, young ladies.
I remember that race. In a very young Erin. And I've been blessed to watch a lot of her great races already, and I expect to see many more. Well, I am going to tell you, it's a great group. It's wonderful. As we get ready to sign off here this evening, I'm going to give the girls the floor one more time. KJ, we'll start with you. And you can leave us with any thoughts or any advice maybe for a young Erin Gemmel, or anything that you'd like to as we say good evening, good night, and goodbye. Go ahead, KJ. What do you got?
Sure thing. So I call them Bruceisms. He had a lot of them, but one of them was that someone's going to pee in your Fruit Loops, and it's going to happen when you least expect it or at least want it to, and you have to be prepared for those changes. So I think that's like very applicable with the day and current times. So I think that'd be good advice. Someone's going to pee in your Fruit Loops.
I like that one. I like that one. All right. And KJ, thanks for being here with us tonight from California. I know you got a lot going on, but paying respect to the old man, younger than me, of course. He's much younger than me, but yeah, it's great to have you. And
great
Vern,
thank you.
Vern, now I told you today you're still on the honeymoon because you're like a year and a couple months, and now that you know, and I'm dead serious. I really respect the fact that you've gotten into counseling. God knows, you know, you caused enough gray hairs in Bruce's life. A lot of people needed counseling the way you guys were going through your years. So tell me this, Vern. Anything you like to leave us with tonight, and thanks seriously for being here. Go ahead, Nicole.
Oh, there we go. Man, I don't even know. First guys, Bruce, I texted KJ this recently, and I was like, man, those guys put up with us. Just sitting with some of my kids now, I'm like, man, I need to apologize, Bruce, for all that sass that I gave him. My gosh, 15, 16-year-old me was a nightmare of a human. So the fact that you, hopefully for your sake, you don't have any like mini Verns running around there right now. But I would say like biggest takeaway, for just any client, like a lot of my counseling now, I do work with a lot of trauma, but I also work with a lot of athletes, is just everyone's so different and so unique is what I'm realizing, that know yourself, know your body, know your reaction to things, and let your coaches in on it. Bruce is softer with age, so I hear. I just suffered because I had to do whatever Andrew did, which is why I didn't want to go to Georgia. But I would say just get to know yourself, get to know your body, get to know any ways that you aren't performing to the level that you want to, and then dig in and figure out why, and kind of work with people so that you can kind of reach that level you want to reach.
Thank you. That's beautiful. And both of you ladies, thanks again for your time. I'm gonna throw it over to Andrew because I know it's been a busy time for you, and you certainly have some words of wisdom. And Andrew, thanks for all that you do to this day for our swimming, the great sport of swimming, and not just USA Swimming, but all around. Give us a little something to sign off with tonight, Andrew.
That's a tough act to follow. I mean, I think one of the things that I took for granted, or I could have done, done a better job throughout my career, and swimming with my dad and everything that went with it, is enjoying the opportunities that I got and that I had. And, I was super lucky to have a great career and get to represent the U.S. in a bunch of different meets. And I sometimes wish while it was happening, I'd step back a little bit and got to realize how cool what I was doing really was. Sometimes you just get so in the moment of your goals, and you're focusing and you're racing. It's hard to do that. But I think one of the better pieces of advice I gave to my dad was actually before Rio, was telling him to enjoy it. I didn't think I stepped back enough in London. And so before he left for Rio, I said, hey, I know it's going to be crazy. I know there's going to be a lot going on, but try and step back and enjoy it. And I think that was one of the better pieces of advice I've given in my life. You're on mute again, Sid.
I'm moving people around, and thanks. I was thinking that you two guys, really have inspired me and my son Quinn, but the family of swimming. And I've been blessed to go to a lot of the Olympics, seeing Steve Lochte and Ryan, and seeing Gary Hall. And I remember when Gary Hall in Atlanta came up to hug his mom. Kara and I were sitting right there, and the sport of swimming is so great that way. And I want to thank you, Andrew and Bruce, and I'm going to give your dad, Andrew, a little chance to kind of sign off. He's so often, Bruce, you're so often have to be technical, and you get involved in so many great things to help us promote the sport. But just sitting around and telling old stories and seeing some of your former pupils and give us something positive here to sign off with this evening.
I mean, it's cliche, but you're in the sport for the people, and the only thing you take out of it is memories and relationships. And I'm getting older, not old yet, never catch up to Sid, but you understand that a little bit more, that the only thing you're going to take out of this sport is the memories and the relationships. And if we've got to hear the same stories over and over again, that's okay, and we can embellish them a little bit more each time. And And if we tell the story enough times, I'll be up to 60 or 65K that one day at Wax. I know it was over 50 and it was right around 55, but it'll be 60 or 65 pretty soon. And I'll go from being a 206 backstroker to being a 202 backstroker if I keep talking. And, it's the stories and the relationships and the coaches and the friends. And while I've loved coaching the group that I've been able to coach, very fortunately, over these last 3 or 4 months, and we've got a great group. I was someplace online the other day, and all these people were there also that I'm not interacting with on a daily basis anymore. And I miss that. And I'm looking forward to getting back on the pool deck and just standing there for heat 17 of the 4 IM and being there in your comfort zone with the people that you really enjoy the sport with.
Oh, well, I really do appreciate it. And I think about, where we've come since you were that 14-year-old kid, the youngest guy on the Kansas City Kamikaze, summer 75, right on Teddy Jackson. And Teddy was probably not quite it. He wasn't quite a kamikaze at that point. I remember talking to Bob because I think he thought about guys like Alfie but you were the only one in your age group who was. I said, that kid Gemmel, he's pretty tough. Erickson, no, he's maybe more talented, but not tough like you. And Eric would be the first to say it. But I'm very thankful for having had the relationship to know familial swimming at Wilmington Aquatic Club, see you guys follow it. And, I signed my newsletter off this week. You guys will know this being kind of like Philly guys, suburban Wilmington, we root for the Eagles and the Sixers. But I took that Rocky quote from his last movie when he was giving his son advice in the alley. He was talking about the world it's a tough, dirty place. And, you're going to get knocked down. It doesn't matter. It's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, kid. And I love that mentality. And I think you two gentlemen, really, really depict that. And I thank you. And I know it's been a tough year. It's been tough for everybody. But, there's Tim Murphy, another whack coach. And it just, moving forward, that's what we're trying to do. And that's what we do with this show. We try and have some fun and move forward. And I just very much am thankful to have men like you in my life, professionally and personally, to help us keep moving forward. Yeah. So with that being said, we're going to call it another week, and we'll see you next week for more stories.
Thanks, Sid.
Thanks, Sid.
Good night, guys. Join us on the Swim Monkey.
Swim Monkey TV. On the